Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. The kind of thesis or the idea of these films is to show Hiccup growing up and maturing, going from kind of the outsider weird kid in a society that is afraid of dragons to changing that society to eventually becoming the chief or the head of this Viking society, to then again reinventing it through this film. And I think that's an amazing thing to show through this trilogy, if this is the last one. And I think that's a beautiful thing to show, and it's really great for kids, but it also shows a really wonderful adventure film, and it really says a wonderful thing about life and his relationship with Toothless. I really love these films. They're probably one of my favorite franchises. It has one of the best scores. It has the best adventure score. Fuck that. It has the best adventure score and adventure theme, maybe in film history, definitely in the modern era. It is just awe-inspiringly beautiful. It is my favorite thing Dreamworks has ever done. Kung Fu Panda franchise is sort of close, but I think it's because this film, it reached me in a way. I always feel something when I'm watching this film. I always feel a love for these characters. There's moments I've cried in all three. There's moments I've sat there and felt loss and felt emotions at these films that I don't think a lot of major studio animated films try to do. The sequels to these films are almost sort of their own beast from the original, which is more of a simple story. It was probably DreamWorks' big surprise. I don't think anyone thought it was going to be as good as it was. It's maybe one of their best, if not their best film. That one was more simple. It had a certain amount of characters. But sort of what's happened through it becoming a franchise is it's taken on a lot. And in some ways that is awesome, because what it's doing visually, like there's so much going on in the frames of this. I almost wish this film was longer to hold on shots more, even just the backgrounds of it. Like these are films I really should be buying the art of books, but I also think like if they were just screenshots of, there's a time where Astrid and Hiccup are talking in front of like a beautiful kind of sunset on Berk, and the outline of Berk is so amazing. I was like, I wish that was a screensaver in itself. Like I would just watch that this entire time. But I also like watching them, and the animation, the first one, it was very good, and what they did with Flight, and Roger Deakins, who is an amazing cinematographer, is a visual consultant on these films. He was a visual consultant for Pixar, but he seems to have gone to DreamWorks for these films. I mean, I don't know what he's adding to it, but all the How to Train Your Dragons films, cinematography-wise, are some of the best looking animated films any year they come out. And the second one had such an intensely smart visual composition. When I watch it again, the second one, I'm almost taken aback by how much is there and how at times I'll miss just like this little thing in the corner and this other really thing. It's visually dense, it's visually smart. It's actually far more complex than it probably gets any credit for, at least visually. Story-wise, it's easy to understand, but visually there's just so much going on. They really pack in everything into a scene. Like, it's really amazing. And I think probably because they did that so well in the second one, this third one continues that motif, much like how Kung Fu Panda 3 took on the amazing visuals of 2. I think this film did better at updating those, but I think the bigger problem with the visuals and with everything that's going on and being able to visually handle all these things is just that this film has way too many characters. That is really a problem in this movie. As much as I love this film, and it has probably the first real great ending I've seen this year. I've seen like 5 movies this year, so it's like not that impressive, but if it was, it is a great Hollywood ending. It's one of the great animation Hollywood endings. People have compared it to Toy Story 3. I would agree with that. It is an ending that had me crying, and it is like the big emotional kind of payoff of the franchise, but they're just like, what the Kit Harington voice character is utterly useless. I don't know why he's here. Just like he could just be in one movie and not come back. Supposedly they're even gonna have the villain in the second one be in this and be like, have a redemption arc, but it's Steven Spielberg who collects checks for showing up at meetings for DreamWorks, I guess. Told them not to do it, so thank you, Steven. for that. But the rest of the storylines, I wish you told them, like, could we cut like a lot of people, because there's like way too many. I felt like in the second one they were better at that, but they did have less stuff going on. And this has like, it's mainly about Hiccup and Toothless and the Bright Fury. Is it Light Fury or Bright Fury? What did they establish? Whatever. The white dragon. And his relationship with that, and this guy who likes to kill dragons, who's voiced by F. Murray Abraham, who, anytime you're bringing out F. Murray Abraham, I'm down. He's really great in this role, almost channeling his inner Herzog or something. I think these films are more about Hiccup and Toothless than they are about the villains, naturally, and I think this villain just plays as like a big bad, kind of not really complex villain. Sometimes I've heard that complaint about this film, and I agree, but at the same time, I kind of think this film is mainly about them and their relationship, and him not sure what to do now that Hiccup has fallen in love, and where does he fit into that, and what does he do with the society of dragons, and now that the world is not okay with that, should the dragons and them keep coexisting, or should they hide, and what should they do? So it's to me, the narrative is about that, and he is more of just, the villain is more of just sort of a construct. He's kind of just pushing them towards a thing that naturally they were going to have to go through. I don't think that makes it bad. I think the sequels are sort of, like I said, they're its own thing. They have a lot going on. There's a lot of kind of world building sort of stuff. But I think the difference between the first one and the sequels is that in the first one, he discovers dragons. He becomes totally woke to what dragons plight and all that stuff. And then he changes the world, and the sequels have to deal with that world. You can't really remake the first one. You can take the themes, which is like, you know, believe in yourself and crap, you know. It's a big budget CG animated film. They're all about believing in yourself. I mean, you know, believe in yourself as long as you are in the same genre conventions that all these predisposed things are also in. I did like that this film understood what it's really about, and I think more so this one than the second one. I might like this more than the second one, although I was thinking after this film I would love to just sit down and watch the entire trilogy, you know, in one sitting or close together or something. I think this is an awesome trilogy. I think it is one of the peaks of DreamWorks. It might be DreamWorks' greatest franchise. This and Kung Fu Panda, but I think this was more solid all throughout each film. I was taken aback by how good each one was, how different each one was in some ways, how similar they were, but I think it understood the ongoing arc of what they're going to do with Hiccup and Toothless. And I love the voice cast. It was interesting that TJ Miller was replaced. And I didn't like the character Rough Nut and whatever. Those characters were featured a lot more. I don't really understand why that needed to be. They were obnoxious. I don't really like Hiccup's friends that much, other than the bigger guy who knows a lot about dragons. The rest I find fairly obnoxious. It's also interesting that this film like comes to the understanding that you have seen the second one and you've seen the first one. And I mean, hey, they made a lot of money. I'm not going to disagree. It's interesting nowadays that sequels definitely immediately go, yeah, you've seen the other one. Like, they just like don't care anymore. And this one definitely is just like putting you in the continuity. They don't really care, which I like. It is very to the point. I think at the beginning it moves really quickly and sort of gives itself a little more room to breathe. I wish the opening fight scene, which needs to be in there story-wise, and I think was structured the right way. It just took me a moment. I was a little surprised by how quickly they were pushing me into this thing. They are films I want to see on the big screen, and all 3 times I've been so happy that I saw them in theaters. I've seen them in 3D. I've seen them at the best screen I can, and there's certain movies that, certain franchises where I have to see them on an amazing screen. This franchise has been one that I've just loved on the big screen. It plays well at home as well. Particularly how they use flight, I think, is amazing. It makes these films all that much more special. It feels like there's a real care and a love to them. The director, Dean DeBalis, who previously directed, obviously, the other 2, and Lilo and Stitch, he just has such a attention to detail to these characters and a love for these characters, but also understanding of, well, who would these people really be? And I think that shows a true love for them, because there's never a sense in this franchise that, much like a lot of franchises where the characters are in this sort of weird Arrested Development sort of thing, or they have to be the thing the audience wants, and he seems to not really care that much. Like, this is the way he's let these characters age, the way he's let these films be different things, kind of shows a more mature director than, I mean, especially for DreamWorks. Like, holy shit. For any animation director, and especially, let's say, mainstream blockbuster filmmaker, kind of shows a real sense of understanding, going for the story and what's important to the core of the story more so than anything else. And I think ultimately that's what, you know, makes this film so wonderful and has made this franchise so wonderful. Having a sequence where it's just Toothless and the Light Fury just fly around together, and just having faith in the audience. That's another thing, is when I was watching it, how much faith this film has in the audience. I was often surprised by that, and I fell into it, and it was just like a wonderful warm blanket to wrap me up and give me a good time at the movies, which these films often do. And I loved it, and I've loved it every time I've seen one of these things. And you know, I've been reviewing stuff through this entire franchise. I love how this has become a great franchise, and how, much like in Lilo and Stitch, it understands what's important about these things, and that's about the character. Seeing these characters grow and seeing what this is about love and maturity, and times you need to hold on to things and times you need to let things go, was beautiful, and it makes you as an audience kind of reflect on what's important. And what's important is to let people, not just yourself, but let other people be who they are. And I think when you come to a certain age, you want that future generation to be able to have that chance that maybe you didn't have, or you did have, but you want to be able to be selfless enough to let that happen. And I think the way that this film tackles that, especially with friendship, about moving on, about aging, I'm just happy to have witnessed this franchise. I wish these films would get more respect. I wish they would get more attention. I wish they'd get better showtimes at the IMAX. I just think they're probably some of the more wonderful adventure films ever made, and definitely of this era. And there's something that we probably didn't appreciate how really, truly great they were. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is a really wonderful film, and it shows me exactly what you can do with an animated film franchise. I think there's a lot of these film franchises that don't exactly know what to do with them. They're supposed to just do it because the studio asked them to, and How to Train Your Dragon naturally progresses in a way that makes it more effortless than most of these films can do. It takes on too much with all these characters. Sure, it probably needs to let go of more characters, but the core of the story, and when I left that theater, I was on a high that very few films can ever leave me with. I was on an emotional high. I'd been through something, and this film gave me that experience. These are theatrical experiences. These are intense kind of stories. These are stories that wrap you up and get you to care and say things about real emotions, while also seeing Hiccup ride his dragon, and you look at these beautiful, wonderful vistas with insane lighting and showing you the beauty and the wonderfulness of Hollywood filmmaking. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is one of Dreamworks' best films ever made. A real wonderful, amazing treat at the movies, and kind of shows you what exactly you can do with technology to use it to make just an ultimately great story. And this film did that as well as this franchise and trilogy has done, and I'm very grateful to have seen all of that. So if you have seen How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.